Welcome to The Explainer. Have you ever wondered how a tiny spark of curiosity, just a simple question, can blossom into a huge, groundbreaking discovery? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on the hidden architecture of knowledge itself, the blueprint that turns our questions into real, solid answers. Let's get into it.
It's a pretty fundamental question, isn't it? We all have questions about the world, but in this flood of information we live in, how do we find answers we can actually trust? Well, it turns out the journey from just wondering about something to having a credible answer, it's not random at all.
Exactly. You wouldn't build a house by just, guessing where the walls should go, right? You'd need a blueprint. And it's the exact same thing for knowledge. If you want to build something that's going to last, you can't just stumble around in the dark hoping for the best. You need a deliberate, thoughtful plan. In the world of research, we call that a design.
So yeah, the formal term is research design. And honestly, that architect's blueprint analogy, it's pretty much perfect. A research design is the master plan. It guides every single decision a researcher makes, and it ensures that the final structure, the knowledge itself, is sound, sturdy, and built to last.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll get a handle on what a research blueprint really involves. Then, we'll dig into the two big approaches to research. We'll do a deep dive on each one, and finally, we'll see how the most powerful studies today build a bridge between them.
All right, let's start with that blueprint. It is so crucial to understand that choosing a research design isn't as simple as, say, picking a hammer out of a toolbox. No, it's a much deeper process that starts way before anyone even thinks about collecting data.
The choice of a blueprint is shaped by some really fundamental stuff. It's not just about the problem you're trying to solve. It's about the researcher's own worldview, their personal life experiences, and even who they're doing the study for, the audience. All of these things shape the final plan, which is why it's so important for researchers to be totally transparent about them.
Okay, so this brings us to the two foundational philosophies in research. For the longest time, people saw these as two competing camps. You had the storytellers on one side and the number crunchers on the other. But as we're about to see, the real story is so much more interesting than that.
So at the simplest level, the difference usually gets broken down like this. On one side, you have qualitative research. This is all about words, stories, context, asking those big open-ended questions to really understand meaning. Then on the other side, you have quantitative research, which focuses on numbers, measurable data, and testing specific ideas with closed-ended questions.
But, and this is probably the most important thing to get about these two, they are not enemies. It's a huge mistake to think of them as total opposites. It's much more accurate to see them as two ends of a spectrum, a research continuum. The most powerful insights often come from understanding where a study falls on that line, or even better, how it manages to combine both.
And our thinking on this has really evolved. If you look back, the numbers-driven, quantitative approach was king for decades. But around the middle of the 20th century, researchers started realizing they were missing something. That rich human context that you can only get with qualitative methods. That shift slowly paved the way for a third major movement, combining the two.
All right, let's dive into that first approach, qualitative research. If you want to go deep, really deep, and understand the human experience from the inside out, this is your blueprint. It's all about exploring the why.
The official definition really says it all. The whole goal here is to understand meaning. How do people make sense of their lives, their experiences, their world? It doesn't try to simplify things. It really honors the complexity and the richness of a situation.
And the process itself is just fascinating. It's flexible by design. The questions might even change as the researcher learns more. You go to where people are, into their natural setting. But here's the key step, inductive analysis. Okay, think of it like a detective arriving at a crime scene. You don't have a theory yet, right? You just collect all the clues, the specific stories, the little details, the observations, and then you build your theory from the ground up. You let the bigger themes just emerge from the data itself.
Now let's swing over to the other end of the continuum. If qualitative research is the deep dive, then quantitative is the panoramic, big picture view. This approach is all about zooming out to test theories and find broad patterns across huge groups of people. It's all about the what.
And again, the definition here is super precise.
This approach tests objective theories by looking at the relationship between variables, which is basically anything you can measure. For example, does the number of hours you study, that's one variable, affect your test score? That's the second variable. It's designed to answer questions just like that. Does X actually influence Y? And notice how totally different this process is. This is a top-down approach. You start with what's called a deductive theory, a specific hypothesis you want to test, like more study hours lead to higher scores. Then you use specific instruments, like surveys or timers, to collect numerical data. You run that data through statistical analysis, and the goal is to see if your findings can be generalized to a bigger population. It's super structured, and it's built so other people can replicate it.
So we've got the deep why and the broad what. But what if you need both to answer your question? Well, that's where our third design comes in. Mixed methods research is the bridge that connects these two worlds. And the really crucial point here is that this isn't just about, doing a survey and then a few interviews on the side. True mixed methods research thoughtfully integrates both. The number crunching and the storytelling work in tandem, each one designed to make the other stronger and to help answer the question more completely.
And this right here is the real payoff. Why is it so powerful? Because you can use the numbers to see the big picture, that's the what, and then use the stories and interviews to understand the deep human experience behind those numbers, that's the why. The overall strength of the study becomes so much greater than what either approach could ever achieve on its own.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of theory, blueprints, approaches, methods, but why does any of this actually matter to you when you're just scrolling through the news or trying to make sense of some new report?
Oh, it matters a great deal. Because understanding the blueprint makes you a way more critical and informed reader. You can look right past the headline and start to understand the how behind a discovery. You can start asking smart questions like, was a giant survey really the right tool here, or should they have done more in-depth interviews? It helps you see that there isn't just one single path to finding the truth.
And ultimately, this is the core principle. The very best research doesn't just force a favorite method onto a problem. No, it starts with the question itself. It carefully selects a blueprint that actually fits the unique nature of that question. A question about lived experience needs a very different blueprint than a question about population trends. The method has to serve the problem, not the other way around.
So, I'm going to leave you with this challenge. The next time you see a headline announcing some new finding, just pause for a second. Go beyond the what and look for the how. Ask yourself, what was the blueprint? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.